For some, computers are becoming as familiar and friendly as pen and paper. In a single decade, the classroom has gone digital.
Again?
Yeah.
More than 100,000 people came to last month's personal computer exhibition. Over 1 million machines were sold last year. Computers are now Britain's fastest growing leisure industry. But beneath the explosion of games, skills and enthusiasm, there's a quite different culture. No law, no security system seems able to get to grips with the new epidemic of data crime. Emma Nicholson MP has waged a vigorous year-long campaign to combat the dangers she sees. British industry has rallied to her cause, giving her their closely guarded secrets of wave after wave of computer virus strikes, frauds and hacks.
A really good computer hacker could paralyze the City of London money markets in 20 minutes. I wouldn't like to be a Minister of Defence if a virus was in a cockpit of a jet aiming to drop a bomb over Russia and it came back, triggered by the virus, to drop it over London. A really good hacker could beat the Lockerbie bomber any day, hands down.
Mel Croucher knows all about such dangers. He's an expert on the netherworld of the hacker, the virus writer and the fraudster. For 10 years, he's infiltrated the murky depths of this computer underworld.
There's an entire computer subculture hereabouts, not just children, adults, professionals and amateurs. What they're interested in, the software that's on display here, is unlocking the little key that protects it, cracking that code, getting into the system, either for sheer devilment or for making large sums of money. These are the hackers.
Until now, the computer hacker has been seen affectionately as a skilled technocrat, beavering away obsessively in his den, a harmless crank exploring the international computer networks for fun. But today it's clear that any computer anywhere can be broken into and interfered with for ulterior motives. The technocrat has mutated to the Technopath. Life hangs on computers. Even the oldest technologies are dead without them. In banking, 1 billion people would take a week to do what one clearing bank's computers now do in a day. 6 million computers govern what we buy and the way we live. In our work and our leisure, it's all down to the computer.
Hello. Oh, hello. How are you?
Anywhere in that chain, the Technopath can and may strike.
I believe that in the United Kingdom, we are very, very severely at risk indeed, largely because in true British fashion, we've buried our heads in the sand.
Britain has more personal computers per head of population than any other European country. But it's their networking that makes them vulnerable between individuals and in workplaces. Intrusion into one spells danger for them all.
You can plant what's commonly known as a virus, or a time bomb, or a worm. All these are neat little words describing methods of wrecking computer systems. I'm thinking of a British airline company where a disaffected computer programmer, as he left, planted a horrible little trap, which meant that on a certain day in the month, the system collapsed, and the airline was unable to continue to take bookings and unable to continue to fly the airline.
20,000 computers are estimated to have been hit by viruses in Britain. One security firm has answered 1,000 separate calls in the past 2 years. Most viruses go unreported.
A computer virus is a piece of computer code, usually between 1 and 3,000 bytes long, which has certain properties. And the properties of a computer virus are that it is self-replicating, that is, it will reproduce itself, it will migrate from one program to another, from one disk to another. It has some side effect, that is, it produces an effect like characters falling down the screen in some cases. It will also put some obstacles in the way of anybody trying to find it.
A few lines of computer code, skillfully written. The virus comes to life. It replicates, spreading from disk to disk, reproducing itself countless times over as it worms its way into the innards of computer after computer.
It's something you produce which becomes live. You don't know where it goes, you don't know how long it's going to live, and it's very exciting. And I think it is that which motivates the computer virus writer to produce a virus which would last for as long as possible and which would proliferate for as much as possible, which would be disastrous to us.
First came the Christmas tree virus, a sensation when it penetrated the computer equivalent of Fort Knox, IBM in Portsmouth.
What happened was a student in West Germany wrote a Christmas card to send around his colleagues at the university. What he didn't realize was that his university was connected to worldwide networks. The result was that the Christmas card was actually sent across the whole of Europe, into the USA, and from within the USA into commercial organizations like IBM. An individual would receive this Christmas card from known associates and colleagues in the company. They would read the instructions which encouraged them to actually run the program, and the net effect was that they would send a copy of the Christmas card to all of their associates and people that they regularly sent mail to.
There seems at the moment to be a view that this is harmless, that it's all right to get into somebody's system and in many cases it doesn't do any damage. That view is totally misplaced. First, very often, the real costs are the costs of clearing up after somebody has trespassed on the system in this way, and you don't know exactly what they may have done. The cost of that can be very high, running into millions of pounds in a number of cases.
Incidents like the Christmas exec have taught the industry a lesson at some expense in terms of disruption. And as a result of that, we are now attempting to keep ahead of these sorts of incidents. And it really is a race. Who will get there first?
But tomorrow, at midnight, October the 13th, the race begins in earnest. The first truly destructive computer virus comes to life. Its code name, data crime.
The data crime virus is a virus which attacks executable images, that is programs on the computer. And if you run any of the infected programs on or after October the 13th of any year, the hard disk will be completely destroyed. The interesting thing is that before data crime is activated, data crime will only spread without giving any clues to its presence. As soon as we enter the date as the 13th of October, so that means 10/13/89, and then run the application, if we try and access C as a disk, it will say invalid drive specification, which means we have lost drive C.
The threat's real. In Europe and America, data crime has already been found lurking. In Holland, police have issued their own computer program to search for the virus. In Denmark, data crimes claimed Europe's biggest virus infection. 260 computers of the postal service have been disinfected just in time. The problem is this: knowing you might have a virus in your computer is one thing, finding it is quite another.
Most personal computers have between 20 and 60, sometimes even 100 million bytes of data and programs. And trying to find a few thousand bytes within those millions of bytes is very difficult.
Like trying to find the eye of a needle in a haystack of wiring. Even for the world's biggest computer company, it takes a major commitment of money and man-hours to deal with a virus.
IBM is not immune from viruses. We have had incidents where, quite innocently, a virus has been brought into the organization. The net effect is that you have to thoroughly clean the whole of that business area. And one of our incidents resulted in us actually having to check 10,000 diskettes, which is no light matter. Several months' worth of effort were involved in checking that.
For small businesses, one disk infected can mean ruin. The bigger the company, the bigger the computer.
For our networked mainframe systems, we have a team of highly specialized people called penetration testers who actually go and test the security of our systems, and we do this as a regular thing. If they manage to break our systems, then heads will roll in the corridors as a result.
Heads could well roll. This particular Friday, a second virus is also due to strike, the Friday the 13th. Last year, British Rail discovered they had the Friday the 13th virus in their personal computer system. They managed to disinfect the network before it caused any real damage.
At the moment, they are still limited to personal computers, mainly on the hard disks through the transport of floppy diskettes into the system. But as time goes on, I think we would be seeing the next level of viruses probably being introduced by disgruntled employees, and that would probably hit the large computers instead of the personal computers. Now, let's say that if the virus was triggered to stop the data from functioning at a certain time, that could kill people.
British Rail declined to take part in this programme, but said they were aware of the possible dangers from viruses. They felt they'd taken precautions in the past, had been successful then, and were confident they would be this time round in keeping their computer systems virus-free. We've not yet suffered the effects of the first virus attack on a computer system that's critical to human life. But with mass transportation, medical and many other public services becoming more and more computer dependent, it's surely only a matter of time. In Scotland, rumours are rife that the poll tax registration has been hit by computer intruders. Exhaustive checks were made after claims that a virus was wiping off every 15th name, replacing it with the details of a fictitious or dead person. The authorities deny any intrusion. Failed virus or hoax, the poll tax software is especially difficult to protect.
In terms of the poll tax computer database, it's extraordinarily user-friendly. Any number of people have access to that, inputting information, handling information, updating information, and the prospect of a miscreant getting into that is very possible.
Government and business are reluctant to admit they're fragile and vulnerable to such threats, frightened either of a loss of public confidence or of setting themselves up as targets for the technopaths who stalk their electronic alleyways. Of all the companies that Dispatches approached, only one, Barclays, was willing to talk at length about the dangers and their very real concerns.
We've had one virus since we started very actively looking for this over the last few years, which was the well-known Friday the 13th virus. This occurred in a small network of personal computers, 10 or 12 systems joined together in a local area network, where we were developing an expert system. We have not only specialist teams who are responsible for security in our computer centers, our mainframe computer centers. We have also specialist teams who deal with hacking. We have a specialist who has written programs to detect computer viruses. We personally have a program mounted in our personal computers that will spot some 200 different known viruses. The problem with that sort of defense is that every time you produce a program to spot 200 new viruses, someone invents a few more for you which you haven't built in a defense against. Almost every aspect of our business has a security element, but one can say from that which is measurable that it is in excess of 20 million a year that we are expending merely on making our systems secure. I don't think it matters how big you are, how knowledgeable you are, how prepared you are, you can still be hit by a virus.
Like Goliath being hit by David with the virus as the stone. No one really knows why technopaths write computer viruses. Hitting back at institutions or major companies could be one motive. Computing may start as a hobby and turn into a nasty habit because of resentment, anger or greed. Whatever the reason or lack of it, viruses are being written. They are out there.
The more malicious person will go into a system and seed a logic bomb, the equivalent of a time bomb in the system. If they have the bottle, they will then come clean. They will even go to the victim and say, I've broken into your system. I'm not telling you how I've done it, but this is the result. Then, and this is historically correct, and I have files of affirmed data, then they are either paid off so as not to detonate this bomb, or they are actually paid and taken on the payroll to explain how they achieved their crime.
It seems to me that many people have a complete moral panic about computer crime, and it is really a problem of perception. They feel that if they acknowledge they've had a computer crime, the general public, their shareholders, the city will think that they're not properly in control of their business. And to a certain extent, that perception is a correct one.
Most companies make out they're fully confident of their machines. Many are not. Viruses are one reason. Computer hacking, the unauthorized entry into computer systems, is another. Hacking was once an intellectual game for computer buffs. For many companies, it's now a nightmare. And even the very highest in the land are not immune. Yorkshireman Steve Gold was one of two computer hackers who got into the Duke of Edinburgh's electronic mailbox. Suddenly, hacking was headline news worldwide.
We broke in on the Prestel system and we discovered several major loopholes, one of which being that we could break into the system. Well, perhaps breaking into the system's too strong a word. We could log on to the system purporting to be anybody we wished. That could range from you, a lady walking down the street, or indeed Prince Philip, who lives in the house behind me. In March 1985, about 10 o'clock, I got a knock on the front door, and 5 officers of the fraud squad paid a visit, cautioned me, and needless to say I was in a bit of a state of shock, and took me off to Sheffield Police Station, and then the next day took me down to Holborn Police Station. They subsequently prosecuted us under the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act. The idea being that us keying in numbers late at night on a computer, remotely over the telephone wire, is analogous to printing dud fivers in your kitchen. A bit of a tenuous connection.
Gold was prosecuted by British Telecom. Eventually, the House of Lords found him not guilty of forgery. He was represented there by Alistair Kelman.
They could, for example, have charged them under the Telecommunications Act, where it is an offence to incur charges on other people's account on any electronic system. And that would have been a very simple prosecution. But they wanted, British Telecom wanted to deal with an additional problem. They wanted to stop people going in on computers that were free and using those computers.
If somebody breaks into an aircraft hangar and the owner of the plane finds that there's evidence that the cover of the engine has been lifted and somebody has been in there, I think you would expect them to have to take a lot of time and trouble finding out if the engine is still working properly. Now, it's exactly the same with a complex computer system. The time and expense is often involved just in finding out whether anything has happened. No damage has to have been done for all that expense to take place.
Walsall in the West Midlands, not the likeliest place to find a French baroness. Barbara Hammett Lebrun, the great-grandniece of American Wild West hero Wyatt Earp, goes unnoticed as she takes her daily stroll. But the Baroness is a most unusual woman. An accomplished painter and musician, she takes a greater delight still in being an accomplished computer hacker.
Hacking is like going into a different world. It's a completely different world. I mean, it's vast, isn't it? Vast. I mean, you can get a number, and from that you get other numbers, and from that you get other numbers, and so you cover the whole universe eventually. You know, it's like looking at the stars, really. It's so exciting. I mean, you start from nothing, really. You've got a machine, you've got communications, you hit a number, you get some more numbers, and you go worldwide.
The Baroness demonstrated to dispatches a relatively straightforward, everyday hack. She's acquired the telephone numbers for hundreds of computers worldwide. These secret and sensitive numbers are common knowledge amongst computer buffs. We've obscured them. Logging on to a switching service computer, the Baroness uses a password she's discovered to connect to Janet, the joint academic network system that links together universities all over the world. On the same hack, she could gain access quite easily to many other academic computer networks which fill her screen. She chooses the Janet News Service. She's in. But she stops at the front door.
Well, I think you are playing a game with the people that produce the programs and the systems. Yes, I do. You do feel you are a poacher, actually. And I don't think it should be made illegal. Because there's a lot of people, hackers, if you like, that know. They know, and they're sensible about these things. You will always get the odd person that will overstep the barrier. Always.
All the hackers dispatches spoke to maintained that they never altered anything in computers they'd entered. But if hacking is made illegal, people like the Baroness could well face prison.
I think originally the perception was that this was an activity that was harmless and was just engaged in by people who wished to test computers for fun. I think that perception is now not correct, and experience on the continent and in America has shown that this is an organized activity, often designed to remove data, to destroy data, and to cause very considerable losses.
Barclays have suffered 3 separate hacks this year that they know about.
In the first case, we don't actually know why he was into the system, because it merely occurred that when the proper user logged into his system to use it, he found that someone was already there and had logged in, we found earlier from the audit trail, some 40 minutes or so before the real user. And as far as we could tell, And this is always a problem, of course. You're never quite sure whether you found everything. As far as we could tell, nothing had taken place from that particular hacking.
It's not taken long for the thrill of the hack to turn into a nice little earner. The latest designer crime in the city is computer fraud. London's finest are having to learn new skills to follow the routes taken by the billions of pounds that move through the electronic money systems each and every hour.
This year, for example, our monies that have been obtained or attempted to obtain is in excess of £477 million. Our cases reported are up 25%, and our arrests are up 63%. I think you've got to look at the enormity of turnover of money here in the city alone. The foreign exchange dealings, I'm told, are in excess of £200 billion per day. And therefore, the enormity of money gives rise to, obviously, the criminal seeking to steal from those funds. And the majority of these transactions are by way of computer, as nearly everything is these days. And therefore, the computer is used as a tool of the criminal to achieve its crime.
Earlier this year, City of London police foiled what would have been Britain's biggest ever robbery. A major international finance corporation had over £50 million actually stolen, electronically, by computer. Fraud squad officers got the money back, electronically, and 25 people are to be prosecuted in 4 different countries.
Together with some of my officers, I attended the institution. They'd had substantial amounts of money, millions of pounds, in excess of £50 million, removed from their system. And it had been distributed around the world in various parcels. And what we did there was that we used the law enforcement agencies around the world, both in the United States, the Far East, and Europe. And as a result, all the monies were saved, considerable evidence was preserved, and in fact, subsequent arrest and prosecution of those persons involved.
Peter Summer believes that most attempted frauds are inside jobs, planned by the discontented.
We have something like 20 years' worth of various books, reports and so on, and you can draw certain sorts of conclusions from them. First of all, very little computer crime is committed by people who are pure outsiders. It's nearly always an inside job, just like most forms of white-collar crime. Secondly, people don't always believe this at first, there's very little computer skill involved. What happens is that the middle-range manager, the lowly clerk, who is working at the coalface, spots that the computer system, the way the computer is connected to the rest of the company, is less perfect than it might be, that there is an opportunity there for fraud. And if that person is in a particular frame of mind, resentful about their job prospects, or if they are short of cash, or any of the things that humanly happen to people, they may try and steal money from the computer. That's the standard pattern.
Not surprisingly, organised crime has rapidly latched on to the potential of computers to attempt frauds on a massive scale. A mysterious European underworld figure known only as Kim enlisted the aid of John Felinsky, a North London roofer. In a city pub, the plan was hatched. As a result of their plot, Prudential Beige, an American securities house, only narrowly escaped losing $8 million from their London base. Felinsky introduced Kim to a childhood friend, Angelo Lamberti. Lamberti was a disgruntled clerk in Prudential Beige's Eurobond operation. Lamberti knew the passwords to the computerized transfer system used by his employer. Armed with a home computer, the two friends successfully hacked into the transfer system and routed the funds through 4 countries and into a Swiss bank account set up by Kim and his associates.
In the Prudential case, £5 million worth of Eurobonds, 18 euro bonds, were at risk when one of their employees, a lowly clerk, decided to become a big-time fraudster. He used no particular skill. In collusion with an outsider who was a roofer of all things, they were able to place a computer in the roofer's home and initiate the fraud. They didn't do it particularly cleverly, and they were caught, but it fits absolutely centrally into the pattern of computer crime. It is trivial for everything except the amounts of money that were at risk.
They almost got away with it. Only last-minute moves foiled the robbery. The mysterious Kim and his European associates remain at large. 2 other large frauds have recently been stopped in the nick of time. At Mitsubishi Finance International, £15 million. At Union Bank of Switzerland, £32 million. The City of London police have told us that organised European crime syndicates were involved in both attempts. The frauds that are reported may be just the tip of the iceberg. Barclays believe the best policy is to go public.
There have been attempts to transfer funds from bank accounts out to other accounts in other parts of the world, but fortunately, so far, to the best of our knowledge, they've been thwarted. The largest I can recall is something like £900,000, which is a fairly sizable sum of money, particularly if you're on the losing side.
There is recent evidence to show that British business has lost a figure of no less than £400 million. This is made up not only of direct losses through fraud, as unauthorised access to a company's computers can also be the first step to defrauding and removing of money, but is also made up of peripheral expenses such as cleansing the system and replacing data that has been destroyed or removed.
Everybody in the city agrees that there really is no such thing as a completely safe computer.
The concept of a safe computer is a dream, really, because you're assuming that the computer and the system running in it is completely untouched by human hands throughout its life, and it's probably useless to anybody.
It's a far cry from the computer as educator. But how to avoid throwing out the baby with the technological bathwater? How to preserve the computer's beneficial role while fighting off the intruder?
Perhaps only a small fraction of the population dislikes the human race, but they do, and some of them are highly computer skilled. I think the law's got to step in and provide a backdrop for the scenario that is being played out in today's computerized world. It's real, it's frightening, it's growing, it's vast, and of course, it's international.
It's become a racing certainty that there will be a computer crime bill of some kind in the forthcoming Queen's speech. It can't come too soon for one Suffolk company. The old family firm of Herberts has just had £160,000 worth of computer programmes illicitly copied. Under existing law, the 2 culprits got away virtually scot-free.
We received a phone call from one of our major supermarket customers to say that the police had been called to one of their stores where one of their employees had passed a copy of our software onto one of our major competitors, GC Avery.
A supermarket assistant hacked into and copied the software which controlled Herbert's scales. This latest computer program had taken 3 years to develop. Herbert's felt it had given them the edge over their rivals in a cutthroat market. There's no suggestion that GEC Avery were knowingly involved in the incident.
The police cautioned the software development engineer at our rival company, but that was really for the theft of 2 discs worth £5 each. We have £160,000 invested in this software. Until this event, I had always assumed that was protected by the law, but I now find that it is not.
Incidents like the one at Herbert set Emma Nicholson on her campaign to outlaw computer misuse. She tried and failed with a private member's bill in the summer, but she's not giving up.
I was fortunate enough to have a very long interview with the Prime Minister on this, and from there everything started to bowl, because she understood the real concerns I was putting out in front of her. Since then, I've been to see all the major cabinet ministers on this and briefed them on it, and I am very hopeful indeed that the government has understood and will now take swift and urgent action.
Specifically, we want access to computer systems to be made illegal if unauthorized. We want destruction of data and programs to be made a criminal offense, and we want the law that would enable us to prosecute against such offenses to be actionable irrespective of where that crime is perpetrated.
Successful hackers argue, first, that they're doing no harm, second, that they're doing good because they're testing out systems and proving weaknesses. I'd love to meet a burglar who broke into my house and argue that at the Old Bailey and considered that that indemnified him against being pushed into jail.
But a new law may not be the hoped-for panacea. It could create as many problems as it solves, not least for the police.
Do you think it is short through £100?
Bravo Mike 4, Roger, that's all received the payment.
It takes 10 years to train a computer professional in this country. How we can expect a police officer to walk into a sophisticated, complex world really is beyond me. There is a 4-week training which less than 100 officers in this country have ever taken. I see no point in having a law on the statute book where one knows in advance that one is not going to have any means of enforcing it. I think it brings the law into disrepute. For a section of the population, what is attractive is that it is outlaw and that there is no real chance, unless they're incredibly unlucky or incredibly stupid, of their ever getting caught. So I think it is not a good idea to introduce unenforceable laws. I don't think they necessarily deter.
There is a jurisdiction difficulty. If a person in the UK hacks into a computer bank in a foreign country and transfers money or causes damage, it's debatable whether the offence occurs in the UK or in the foreign country. And when you start passing information from one country through a gateway into another country and into another country, then the whole problem gets horrendously difficult. We need to be able to extradite serious computer criminals for this type of activity, and that may well require a new international convention to deal with what I term information terrorism.
Society needs the computer show to go sweetly on. Ironically, while the government may outlaw hacking with one hand, it seems certain that the other hand is twisting those very same skills to its own ends.
It seems apparent that industrial espionage and international destabilization between states and between rival powers, whether they're economic or military, is happening now. It will be much easier, in practical and economic terms, to dispense with the services of armies of guerrillas, of chartering boats and planes, of bribing, of changing fingerprints. You don't have to go through that palaver anymore. You can press a few buttons to destabilize a company or even a nation state.
There is also no doubt in my mind that for some considerable time, the world's largest intelligence gathering agencies, National Security Agency, GCHQ, KGBT, have been using hacking type techniques. In fact, it is absolutely past belief that they haven't been using them.
A new computer-skilled generation is in the making. The fear is that new laws may restrict the innocent while failing to arrest the virus, the hack, or the fraud.